This is the hidden crisis behind World Cup 2026. And yes, it's America's immigration problem. The 2026 FIFA World Cup is supposed to be a historic moment for North America. For the first time ever, 48 national teams will compete in the biggest World Cup in history. More than 100 matches will be played across the United States, Canada, and Mexico. Millions of fans are expected to travel across the continent, and economists have projected billions of dollars in economic activity. On paper, it looks like a dream scenario. Hotels should be packed, airlines should be busy. Restaurants, bars, and local businesses should benefit from a wave of international visitors, unlike anything North America has seen before. For years, organizers have promoted the tournament as more than just a sporting event. They've described it as a once-in-a-generation economic opportunity. But as the tournament approaches, a growing number of economists, tourism experts, and industry observers are becoming concerned about something that has received surprisingly little attention. Not the stadiums, not transportation, not security, immigration. While the United States is preparing to host the largest World Cup ever, some experts are questioning whether the country is making it easy enough for international fans to actually attend. And if they're right, the economic benefits that many people are expecting may not fully materialize. To understand why, we need to start with a simple question. What makes a World Cup successful? Most people would probably say football, great matches, packed stadiums, memorable moments. And while all of those things matter, there is another factor that often determines whether a tournament is considered an economic success: visitors. Lots and lots of visitors. The economic logic behind hosting the World Cup is relatively straightforward. Fans travel from around the world. They book flights, they stay in hotels, they eat in restaurants. They use local transportation, they buy merchandise, they spend money. That spending supports businesses, creates jobs, generates tax revenue, and stimulates economic activity. At least that's the theory. And in many cases, it works. But the entire model depends on one critical assumption. People actually have to come, and that's where concerns are starting to emerge. Because unlike previous World Cups, the 2026 tournament is taking place during a period of growing uncertainty surrounding international travel to the United States. For many travelers, particularly those coming from certain countries, entering the United States is not always a simple process. Obtaining a visa can take months. In some cases, waiting times for visa interviews have stretched far beyond what tourism experts consider ideal for a major international event. Imagine you're a football fan living in another country. You finally get the opportunity to watch your national team compete in the World Cup. You save money, you make plans, you buy tickets. But then you discover that obtaining permission to enter the United States could take months, involve significant paperwork, and carry a level of uncertainty. Suddenly, the trip becomes more complicated, and for some people, that complication may be enough to change their plans. Now, to be clear, this doesn't mean millions of fans won't attend. Many certainly will. The World Cup remains one of the most attractive sporting events on the planet, but economists aren't focused on whether fans will come. They're focused on how many fans will come. Because even a relatively small reduction in international visitors can have a significant impact on economic projections. And that's why some experts are paying close attention to immigration and visa policies. The concern isn't necessarily that stadiums will be empty. The concern is that the economic benefits may fall short of expectations. And expectations have been extremely high. Some projections suggest the tournament could generate billions of dollars in economic activity across North America. Those projections are based on assumptions about tourism, spending, travel, and visitor numbers. But what happens if fewer international visitors arrive than expected? The answer is simple. The economic impact becomes smaller. And while that might sound obvious, the consequences can be significant. Hotels expecting record occupancy rates may see lower demand. Restaurants planning for massive crowds may see fewer customers, local businesses may experience a smaller boost than anticipated, and cities counting on tourism-related spending may find themselves revising expectations. Again, this doesn't mean the World Cup will fail. Far from it, the tournament will almost certainly attract enormous crowds. The real question is whether it will attract as many visitors as economists originally projected. And that's where inflation enters the story. Because immigration concerns are not the only challenge facing international travelers. Travel has become more expensive. Flights cost more. Hotels cost more. Food costs more. Transportation costs more. For many families, attending a World Cup now requires a significantly larger financial commitment than it did just a few years ago. Imagine a family of 4 traveling internationally. Flights alone may cost thousands of dollars. Hotels can quickly add thousands more. Then there are match tickets, food, transportation, and countless other expenses. The total cost can become overwhelming. Now add visa requirements and immigration uncertainty on top of those costs, suddenly a dream trip becomes much harder to justify. And that's exactly what some economists are worried about. Not one single factor, but the combination of multiple factors working together. Higher prices, travel uncertainty, visa delays, immigration concerns. Together, these issues may reduce international demand. And if demand falls, economic projections may need to be adjusted. This is particularly important for cities like Miami. Miami is often viewed as one of the major economic winners of the tournament. The city has strong international connections, it's a major tourism destination, and it has long served as a gateway between the United States and Latin America. On paper, Miami seems perfectly positioned to benefit from the World Cup. But economists have pointed out that Miami's success depends heavily on international visitors. If fewer visitors arrive than expected, the city's economic gains may be smaller than projected. And Miami isn't alone. Many host cities are counting on international tourism to help justify investments and planning efforts associated with the tournament. The challenge is that tourism forecasts are notoriously difficult to predict. Small changes in visitor behavior can produce large changes in economic outcomes. And that's one reason economists often approach major sporting events with caution. The headlines tend to focus on best-case scenarios. The reality is usually more complicated. But there is another reason why immigration concerns matter: perception. Even if visa policies remain unchanged, public perception can influence travel decisions. People don't make decisions based solely on facts. They make decisions based on how they feel. If international travelers perceive a destination as difficult to enter, they may choose another destination. If travelers worry about immigration procedures, lengthy processing times, or uncertainty at the border, some may decide the trip isn't worth the effort. Whether those concerns are justified or not is almost beside the point. Perception itself can influence behavior, and behavior influences economic outcomes. This creates a fascinating challenge for World Cup organizers. It's not enough to host the matches. It's not enough to build infrastructure. It's not enough to sell tickets. You also need to convince millions of international visitors that attending the tournament will be easy, enjoyable, and worth the investment. And that may prove more difficult than many people expected. Supporters of the tournament argue that these concerns are being exaggerated. They point out that the World Cup remains one of the most powerful attractions in global sports. Fans regularly travel extraordinary distances to attend matches. Many people have been planning their trips for years, and the United States remains one of the world's most popular tourist destinations. Those arguments are valid. There is every reason to believe the tournament will attract millions of visitors. The question is whether it will attract enough visitors to meet the most optimistic projections. Because the difference between a successful World Cup and a wildly successful World Cup often comes down to margins. A few percentage points here, a few percentage points there. Small changes in visitor numbers can translate into hundreds of millions of dollars in spending. And that's why economists continue paying attention to immigration and travel policies. Not because they expect disaster, but because they understand how sensitive economic forecasts can be. The broader lesson extends beyond football. The 2026 World Cup highlights an important reality about modern economies. Large events depend on people, people crossing borders, people spending money, people making travel decisions. And whenever barriers make those decisions more difficult, economic outcomes can change. That's true for tourism, it's true for international business, and it's true for the World Cup. Which brings us back, the hidden crisis behind World Cup 2026. The word crisis might sound dramatic. After all, the tournament is still expected to be one of the largest sporting events ever held. The stadiums will likely be packed. The television audiences will be enormous. The excitement will be unforgettable. But hidden beneath the celebrations is a challenge that many people aren't discussing. The challenge isn't whether football fans love the World Cup. They do. The challenge is whether enough of those fans will be willing and able to make the journey. Because for all the discussions about economic growth, tourism booms, and billions of dollars in spending, everything ultimately depends on one thing: people showing up. And if immigration concerns, visa delays, inflation, and travel costs discourage even a portion of those visitors, the economic story of World Cup 2026 may look very different from what many people expected. The tournament will almost certainly be remembered for the matches, the goals, the stars, the champions. But economists will be watching something else: visitor numbers, hotel occupancy rates, tourism spending, and economic impact. Because long after the final whistle blows, one question will remain. Did the biggest World Cup in history deliver the economic boom that was promised, or did hidden barriers quietly reduce its impact before the tournament even began? The answer may determine whether World Cup 2026 becomes a case study in economic success or a lesson in how even the biggest sporting event on earth cannot escape the realities of immigration, tourism, and global economics.